Okay, so you've shared some really fascinating sources with us, digging into Daniel and Revelation. And I know we're both excited to really explore what happens when you look at these books together.
Absolutely. And listeners often want to get the insights quickly, but, thoroughly too.
Exactly. And I think this deep dive will definitely deliver some surprising connections without being, hopefully, too overwhelming.
Well, our main focus today is really getting to grips with how the prophecies in Daniel chapters 2 and 7 connect with Revelation, specifically chapters 12 and 13.
Right. They're separate books, obviously, but they seem to offer these parallel views, maybe expanding views of the same events, both historical and future ones.
That's the core idea. You get a much richer, sort of more detailed picture of these themes when you see them side by side compared to just reading one in isolation.
Yeah, those aha moments, right, when you see how they fit. And we're mainly looking at this through excerpts from a YouTube transcript, Esteban Bohr discussing these connections.
That's right. He lays out this idea of parallel prophecies very clearly.
Okay, so let's unpack that foundational concept first.
Yeah.
Parallel prophecies.
Right. So the basic idea is that Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 12, and Revelation 13 aren't just separate visions, they're actually parallel. Each one builds on the one before it, adding more detail, expanding the picture.
Like layers of an onion, or maybe different camera angles on the same scene.
Exactly. A good way to put it. You see the same core events, but with increasing focus and more specific information each time.
Okay. And you mentioned a specific example in Revelation 12, that earth dragon sequence, verses 15 to 17. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting pattern. You see the dragon identified as Satan persecuting the woman who represents God's people or the church.
Oh, yay.
Then the earth steps in. It helps the woman by swallowing the flood the dragon sends after her. So there's this period of, let's say, relief. The persecution stops, or at least that phase of it does.
Uh-huh. Earth provides help.
But that act of help actually makes the dragon more angry. So he then turns his attention to the remnant of the woman's seed.
The remnant?
Yeah, those described as keeping the commandments of God and having the testimony of Jesus Christ. So the pattern is persecution, then temporary relief or intervention, followed by renewed, maybe even more focused persecution.
Persecution, relief, renewed persecution.
Okay. And how does that pattern connect over to Revelation 13?
Well, it's striking. In Revelation 13, verse 5, we see the beast from the sea. It's given authority to act for 42 months.
42 months. Okay, that time frame sounds familiar.
It should, because in Revelation 12, verse 14, when the woman flees from the dragon's persecution, she's nourished in the wilderness for times, and half a time.
Right. Daniel also uses that phrase.
Exactly. And biblically, times, and half a time, and 42 months represent the same period, 1,260 prophetic days. Or years. So the sea beast's reign in Revelation 13 matches the duration of the dragon's persecution of the woman in Revelation 12.
Wow, okay. That's a very direct link, a shared time frame. That feels really significant.
It is. It strongly suggests we're looking at aspects of the same historical period or power. And the earth element. Does that show up again in Revelation 13?
It does. Right after the sea beast, in verse 11, another beast appears. And where does it come from? The earth.
The same earth that helped the woman in chapter 12.
Precisely. This earth beast looks different and has two horns like a lamb, suggesting something Christ-like or perhaps initially peaceful, but then it speaks like a dragon.
Speaks like a dragon.
Yeah.
So deception involved.
That's the implication. Initially, it might seem supportive, maybe even limiting the persecution from the sea beast for a time, echoing how the earth helped the woman. But ultimately, just like in chapter 12's pattern, this earth beast ends up spearheading a renewed persecution, using the dragon's voice, so to speak.
So the pattern holds: sea beast persecution, 42 months. Then the earth beast arises, perhaps offering some apparent respite, but then it leads the charge in a later persecution.
Exactly. Persecution, intervention shift, renewed persecution. It's consistent across both chapters.
That's a really strong parallel.
Yeah.
Now, what about this chain of authority you mentioned earlier? How does that weave into this?
Right. So who are these entities? Revelation tells us the dragon gives his power, his throne, and great authority to the beast from the sea.
The dragon gives power to the sea beast.
Okay. And contextually, the dragon in Revelation 12 is first seen trying to destroy the male child Jesus at birth. That points directly to Satan working through pagan Rome, like with Herod.
Got it. Pagan Rome.
Then this sea beast, receiving the dragon's authority, reigns for that times and half a time, or 1,260 years. Historically, this is often interpreted as representing papal Rome, which inherited influence after pagan Rome's decline.
So pagan Rome to papal Rome.
And then, following the description of the sea beast, the earth beast comes up. And Revelation 13 says this earth beast exercises the authority of the first beast, the sea beast, in its presence, and makes the earth worship the first beast.
So a transfer of authority again. Dragon to sea beast, and sea beast's authority somehow channeled or enforced by the earth beast.
Exactly. It's like a sequence. Dragon, sea beast, earth beast, enforcing the sea beast's agenda.
And you mentioned a Roman connection running through all three.
Yes, that's what's really striking. The dragon is linked to pagan Rome trying to kill Jesus. The sea beast's reign aligns with the period of papal Rome's major influence. And the earth beast. It speaks like a dragon, connecting it back to that original Roman characteristic or power source, even if it looks different initially.
So it's like different manifestations or phases of a similar underlying power or influence, all tied back to Rome in some way.
That seems to be the implication, yes. A kind of evolving but connected lineage of power described in these symbols.
This really helps bridge Daniel and Revelation. And you also mentioned insights from other writings, sometimes called Spirit of Prophecy, about how these books relate. Could you clarify what that means in this context?
Sure. In this discussion, when we talk about the Spirit of Prophecy, we're referring to the writings of Ellen G. White. Her interpretations are quite influential for many studying these books.
Okay. And what do those writings suggest about Daniel and Revelation?
They strongly suggest that Daniel and Revelation are meant to be studied together. The idea presented is that Revelation essentially unseals or unveils things that were sealed in Daniel's prophecies, particularly regarding the last days.
Unseals Daniel. So Revelation makes Daniel clearer, especially about the end times.
Precisely. Daniel provides the prophetic skeleton, you could say, the broad outline. Revelation comes along and adds the flesh, the details, the specifics, making the picture much fuller. These writings emphasize that Revelation is really the culmination, pulling together threads from Daniel and other parts of the Bible.
Daniel gives the structure. Revelation fills it in. Okay, that makes sense. So let's dig into Daniel 2 itself then. What's the basic structure we get there?
Daniel 2 is the vision of the great statue, right? Head of gold, that's Babylon, roughly 605 to 539 BC. Then chest and arms of silver, Medo-Persia. Belly and thighs of bronze, that's Greece, ruling roughly from 331 to 168 BC.
Okay, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece.
Then the legs of iron, that's Rome, starting its dominance around 168 BC. And finally, the feet and toes, made of iron mixed with clay. This represents the divided state that follows Rome, starting around the fall of the Western Empire, say 476 AD, and continuing on.
The famous succession of kingdoms, gold, silver, bronze, iron, then iron and clay. But as we hinted, Daniel 2 is quite high level, isn't it? It leaves things out.
Oh, definitely. It's foundational, but it's quite limited in detail. It doesn't tell us much about Babylon, Medo-Persia, or Greece beyond their existence and succession.
Right.
More importantly, for Rome, the iron legs, it doesn't show the different phases of Roman power that later prophecies detail. It doesn't mention that blasphemous power, the little horn power that emerges later.
The one Daniel 7 focuses on.
Exactly. And Daniel 2 doesn't really elaborate on the two distinct aspects of the feat, the initial division, iron and clay mix, and maybe a later phase. Plus, there's no mention of something like an investigative judgment, which comes up in later chapters.
So, Daniel 2. Great starting point, gives the timeline of empires, but lacks the internal details and later developments, especially concerning Rome.
Spot on. It sets the stage, but the drama unfolds in the later chapters.
Which brings us neatly to Daniel 7. This is where we get more detail, right? It parallels Daniel 2, but adds layers.
Absolutely. Instead of metals, Daniel 7 uses 4 beasts to represent those same 4 empires, but it gives them much more character, more descriptive detail.
So the first beast.
A lion with eagle's wings. That's Babylon again. But Daniel 7 adds details. The wings are plucked off, it's made to stand up like a man, and given a man's heart. Symbolic changes happening within Babylon's time.
Okay, more dynamic than just a head of gold. And the second?
A bear raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth. That's Medo-Persia. Again, specific details, the lopsided stance, the ribs not present in the silver chest and arms imagery.
Adding texture.
And the third. A leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. That's Greece. The speed suggested by wings and significantly the 4 heads, which Daniel 8 helps explain as the division of Alexander's empire after his death. Daniel 2 just had bronze.
Right, much more specific. Okay, so that leads to the 4th beast, representing Rome. And this one sounds quite different.
Oh, it is. It's described as dreadful, terrifying, and exceedingly strong. It has great iron teeth linking back to the iron legs of Daniel 2, but also bronze claws. And crucially, it has 10 horns and, in some related descriptions, 7 heads. This beast is complex.
His horns that connects to the 10 toes of the statue, presumably,
Yeah.
the division of Rome.
Exactly. But Daniel 7 clarifies how this happens. The 10 horns arise from this fourth beast. They represent the kingdoms that emerged out of the Roman Empire. That's phase 2, you could say. Phase 1 is the beast itself in its unified pagan Roman form, corresponding to the iron legs.
Okay, phase 1, unified pagan Rome. Phase 2, division into 10 kingdoms, the horns. Is there a phase 3?
Yes. And this is the major addition in Daniel 7. Among the 10 horns, another horn comes up, a little horn. It's different from the others. It uproots 3 of the original 10 horns.
A little horn, different, arises among the 10. This is the power Daniel 2 didn't mention.
Precisely. This is widely interpreted as representing papal Rome. Daniel 7 gives us its characteristics. It speaks great things, blasphemies. It makes war against the saints, persecuting God's people. It thinks to change times and laws, specifically God's law.
Wow, okay. Blasphemy, persecution, attempting to change God's law. That's very specific.
Very. And Daniel 7 gives its period of dominance. Time, times, and half a time.
There it is again. The 1260 years.
Exactly. This period of the little horn's reign directly corresponds to that mixture of iron and clay in the feet of Daniel 2. It's the time when this religio-political power held significant sway within the fragmented Roman world.
So Daniel 7 places that 1260-year period within the Roman timeline after the initial division.
Yes, and importantly, this little horn power arises from within the existing Roman structure, among the 10 horns. It's not like Babylon being replaced by Medo-Persia. It's an internal development within the Fourth Kingdom sphere.
That's a crucial distinction. Okay, so Daniel 7 adds the phases of Rome, the 10 kingdoms, and especially this little horn power with its characteristics and time frame.
A huge expansion on Daniel 2.
Now let's jump to Revelation 12. How does this chapter build on Daniel 7? And you also mentioned a connection way back to Genesis 3.15.
Right. Revelation 12 kind of zooms out and then zooms back in. It connects to that very first prophecy in Genesis 3.15, the promise of enmity between the serpent and the woman, and between the serpent's seed and the woman's seed.
The woman's seed bruising the serpent's head, and the serpent bruising his heel. That core conflict.
Exactly. Revelation 12 dramatizes this cosmic conflict. We see the key players laid out.
Okay, so what are the stages in Revelation 12?
Well, you can see about 6 main stages. First, there's the woman. She's shown before the child is born, clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, a crown of 12 stars. This is often seen as representing God's faithful people throughout history, initially the Old Testament church or Israel.
A glorious picture. Stage 2.
The woman is pregnant, crying out in labor. This represents Israel longing for, anticipating the Messiah.
Okay, then the antagonist appears.
Yes, stage 3. The great red dragon. Notice 7 heads and 10 horns.
Just like the description related to the fourth beast in Daniel 7.
Precisely the same imagery. It explicitly identifies the dragon as Satan, but he's working through an earthly power here of the Roman Empire.
Got it. Dragon working through Rome. Stage 4.
The dragon stands right before a woman, ready to devour her child the moment it's born.
That sounds like Herod trying to kill the baby Jesus.
Exactly. Matthew chapter 2, it's the serpent's seed, Rome, instigated by Satan, trying to destroy the woman's seed, Jesus, right at the start. The Genesis 3.15 conflict in action.
Wow. Okay, stage 5.
The child is born, and he is caught up to God in his throne. This clearly points to Jesus' ascension after his resurrection.
So the immediate attempt to destroy him failed, and he ascended. What happens to the woman then?
Stage 6. After the child's ascension, the dragon turns his fury on the woman. She flees into the wilderness. And how long is she there?
Let me guess. 1,260 days.
You got it. 1,260 prophetic days, or years.
Mhm.
It explicitly links this period of the woman's wilderness experience, the church-facing persecution, to that same time frame we saw in Daniel 7 for the little horn, and in Revelation 13 for the sea beast.
And Revelation 12.13 even uses the other phrasing too, doesn't it?
It does. It says she's nourished there for time, times, and half a time, helped symbolically by 2 wings of a great eagle. So Revelation 12 explicitly ties the dragon's persecution of the church to that 1,260-year period.
It's tying all these threads together. Daniel 7's little horn, the Genesis conflict, the time frame.
And then we see the earth helping the woman again, swallowing the flood the dragon sends. That specific phase of intense persecution ends.
But, like the pattern we discussed, the dragon isn't finished.
No, the chapter ends with the dragon furious because the earth helped the woman. So he goes off to make war with the remnant of her seed, those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Echoing the description of the saints persecuted by the little horn in Daniel 7 and setting up a future conflict.
Exactly. It perfectly bridges the historical persecution, the 1260 years, with an end-time focus on the remnant who hold fast to God's commandments and their faith in Jesus.
Which leads us right to the brink of Revelation 13, which presumably picks up this story of the remnant and the dragon's renewed efforts.
That's right. Revelation 13 immediately follows this, describing the beast from the sea, the one that reigned for the 1260 years, receiving what looks like a deadly wound, but then that wound heals. And this healing leads to the whole world wandering after the beast, setting the stage for the final phase of the conflict involving the earth beast as well.
The deadly wound and its healing. Okay, that definitely sounds like a topic for another deep dive.
It certainly is. Revelation 13 takes all these elements and focuses them onto the final crisis.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Just mapping out Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Revelation 12 like this really shows the progressive nature of these prophecies.
It really does. The main thing to take away is just how interconnected they are. You don't get the full picture from just one. Each adds crucial pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, Daniel gives the skeleton, Revelation adds the details, as you said, and seeing the consistent time frames, the recurring symbols like the dragon beast, the pattern of persecution, it's powerful.
It paints a coherent, though complex picture across centuries of history and prophecy.
We really hope this has helped listeners connect those dots and maybe sparked some of those aha moments we talked about. I know these topics can feel dense sometimes.
They can be, but understanding the structure, how they build on each other, makes it much more manageable and I think much more rewarding.
Absolutely. So we definitely encourage everyone listening to, maybe look at these chapters again with this framework in mind, see what other connections jump out.
Yeah, read Daniel 2, then 7, then Revelation 12 and 13 together. See the flow.
And maybe a final thought to leave with everyone. Considering this clear pattern, the powers involved, the persecution, but also that recurring emphasis on God's commandments and the testimony of Jesus as defining the faithful remnant. What does that suggest about the core issues, the real heart of the matter, in the final conflict these prophecies seem to point towards?
That's the question, isn't it? What's truly at stake?
Something to ponder. Well, thank you so much for walking us through this. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure. Always good to explore these connections.
And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We look forward to exploring more with you next time.